time when the war in Ukraine is over, when the territorial integrity of Ukraine is restored, and we go back to a table for redrafting European order and especially a security order in Europe. In that context, we have to make sure that countries like Georgia and Moldova and others who strive towards European and Euro-Atlantic integration have their voice heard. My worst fear is that people will be so happy with the situation being resolved in Europe that, in Ukraine, sorry, that the other countries will be left in the bloom again. And if it happens, it will have a dramatic effect. And I have a very specific example for that. In 2008, we considered Georgia to be an isolated case. We thought that it was one of the time event, and we could manage it. We could manage it locally, and then forget it and continue life as nothing was happening. Now, my fear is that we are about to make the same mistake about Ukraine, that Ukraine could be considered as an isolated case. And once it is resolved, everybody is very happy and we go back to business as usual. We have to make sure that in new security order or new architecture, which will be created after the end of the war, the countries who have this desire are given the right to experience, to exercise a free foreign policy, free from outside interference, free from blackmailing. That's the decisions of the future which have to be taken, and it has to concern not only EU part but NATO part as well, because as you know, there is no development without security, and there is no security without development. So those two organizations are very much interlinked, and transatlantic bond there is an important factor which the war in Ukraine only underlined its importance.
Yeah. As a French working for a US organization, I can tell you that I'm relieved that some disturbing ideas about a new security architecture in cooperation or kind of discussion with Russia is over. So that's a good thing for all of us. Before to get to the last question of this panel, I would like to invite the audience, if you have some questions, to go to the microphone, and then we can have, according to the time, 5 minutes and something to answer your question. But maybe a last bit controversial, straight to the point question. We have this remaining divide. Whose fault is it? Is it the fault of the Western European countries that were not able or willing to listen? Or is it the fault of Central, Eastern, Southern European countries that were not able to make their voices listened?
Listen, it's not about putting the fault on someone. It's the dynamics that we're seeing, and but I like the provocative way of putting it, because indeed you can also put it like this. But it's the whole dynamics. Once you were part of the EU, and this is what the Central and Eastern European countries have been given the chance to. You have the chance of becoming influential in shaping the EU legislation, in shaping the European architecture. But after that, it is up to you. It is up to you to create the mechanisms, the internal mechanism, to create national consensus, to create regional consensus, to create coalitions. And as Rosa was just saying, that Central Eastern European countries don't really have a line, and after the latest developments in some of the countries, like Slovakia, for example, or not to mention Hungary, it's very complicated to have a common line, but that doesn't mean that you can create coalitions only within this region. There is a diversity of coalitions that you can create. You can create coalitions with the Scandinavians on some matters, with the Southerners on other matters, with the Northwestern Europeans on other matters. So there is still a divide there, but I think at the level of political integration, CE is strongly politically integrated into the whole European architecture, that at least that part of the CE, which is part of the European Union, of course. There is, of course, the economic gap which is still there, and which is preventing a harmonization of the policies, but which also results in a certain divide when it comes to the policies, because whereas at the beginning, when these countries joined the EU, there was a lot of enthusiasm and everyone in the CE was following the lead of the Franco-Germans on all of the policies just because they were happy to be part of the club. In time, they have seen that just following that line blindly doesn't necessarily defend your interest in the best way. So you still have to make your voice heard and show that the economic and social situation in this region is somewhat different than in northern Western Europe. The priorities of the population, the state of the development of the economy and the society is different, and therefore the decisions that are made in Brussels have to take into account, they have to be more balanced. I'm talking, for example, about the preoccupation which is much higher in Western Europe on the environmental direction, and in Central Eastern Europe, the preoccupations for the economic growth is still much bigger. So there has to be a balance whenever these policies are being decided in Brussels. Sometimes this balance was not, that created a bit of alienation. Now, what can be done in the future? I also have to raise one point which seems a bit overlooked in Brussels and elsewhere. The governments across Europe are becoming increasingly unstable. Otherwise said, the governments fall faster and faster across the EU. Yeah? There is an increasing instability. There is the speed of replacing the politicians at the top echelons is increasing. This is a phenomenon that we're seeing from Portugal. No, from Portugal all the way to Sweden. What does this mean? It means that it is much harder to make long-term plans, which have very big consensus in the society, in the political class. It's very hard to build projects, strategic projects that will be supported and that you are certain that they will be supported in 2, 3, 5 years. So we really have to pay attention to this, and this brings us to the beginning of our discussion that you need a big consensus among the politicians, among the political class, before going ahead with a project, because otherwise the opposition will undermine you, and the opposition will come to power much sooner than you think. This is what is happening now. That also means that you need the ones with the speed of replacement of the politician increasing. It means that the new ones need to be ready for the tasks. They need to be properly educated, they need to be in sync with the agenda, they need to have the knowledge to get things done, because in many countries you have politicians which race too fast, and they're still unprepared for the job. That's why the young generations need to follow this phenomenon. There's an opportunity for them, but there's also a risk of being, of having things more difficult to plan on the long term and execute them.
Thank you very much. I can see we have no question from the public. We have one question from the public. We have two questions from the public. Oh, okay.
Hello. My name is Liliana Popescu. I'm coming from academia. And as an academic, I'm going to ask a very uncomfortable question. How can we talk, and under what conditions? Of course we can talk, but under what conditions we can talk about new European architecture under the conditions in which Europe is under attack? And we know that. We know the warnings of Mr. Putin saying that he wants Europe to go back to 1997. So, yeah, this is my question. Thank you.
Who would like to answer?
I'll give it a shot. I think that we have had a transformation in all capitals, in all different ways, to recognize that we can't deal with Putin the way we've dealt with him before. Now, does that mean we have a unified answer? No. But I think some of the suggestions that we're coming up with here are ways in which we deal with that. I think especially the question that my colleague mentioned about don't forget the outlying elements. That is, don't try to solve problems in Europe by isolating them and solving them, but by seeing them together. No one has mentioned, for example, the West Balkan 6, your neighbors here. If we keep looking at the West Balkan 6 as an isolated kind of incident, I think we get nowhere. But if the West Balkans and their neighbors, say Romania, say Bulgaria, and their neighbors to the north, are all part of a rethinking of what this threat means for Europe, Georgia, other friends, then we have a chance to rethink the way that we do policy. So in this sense, I take issue with you. I think we are aware of what Putin has done. We just haven't come up with a coherent way of managing these issues yet. I'm optimistic that people of goodwill and talent are working on that.
If I may, to continue that line, I think the request which you mentioned, going back to 1997, the borderline, is exactly the reason why we need to rethink the existing architecture. I think one of the important lessons that we have to learn out of this war again is that the spheres of influence and the so-called neutrality areas, the buffer zones, did not prove to be right approach. So I think that demand of Russia to go back to 1997 line was the result of, to a certain extent, of an appeasement policy where we tried to accommodate totally unlawful requests of one particular player, on European continent, and I think that policy failed. And the realization of that policy failed leads us to creation of the new architecture. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, that's what Putin's invasion of Ukraine led to, that realization. That's what it took. But yes, it's the end of the recognition of, spheres of influence. It's, okay, the EU and NATO are going to get bigger, and there's going to be a hard border with Russia. It's not what Europeans wanted, but it's the only response possible to Putin's invasion.
Sir, over to you.
Paul Schultz from London with Global Foresight Strategies. I think my question fits onto the last one, and it's about the language and the emotion with which relations with Russia need to be discussed. I see a dilemma in the commentary that's building up. It is necessary to combat Ukraine fatigue. If the Russians are not to be allowed to win in Ukraine, it's necessary to continue to support Ukraine. But that can only be done by mobilizing a certain amount of emotion behind it, and not ceasing to be angry, not ceasing to look at what is happening every day and letting it become normalized. But that gets caricatured as Russophobia. If you concentrate on atrocity and lies and murder, the Russians have this convenient word, the Tsarist diplomatic service coined Russophobia. It's irrational, it's wrong. So it seems to me that what's necessary is a kind of Russian disgust, not to individual Russians, but to the behaviors of the Russian state. But if that is mobilized, how do you integrate Russia in a new security architecture the day after? How is it possible, in other words, to remain sufficiently determined and yet not create a chasm between Russia and the rest of Europe, which would be impossible to bridge in the new architecture? That surely is part of our problem, isn't it?
Would like to...
Yeah, well,
please.
I mean, I think this is a huge problem. And I think Europeans haven't quite made up their minds whether we're fighting Putin or whether we're fighting Russia. And I leave that open because I think this is an open question. But a lot will depend on what happens in Russia. And I think the general consensus is in the entire West is that the West is not pursuing regime change. It's down to Russians to decide what their future will be. And depending on that future, then the new agreement or architecture or the way in which the West engages with Russia will be shaped very much by what happens domestically. There's been, I think, partly because of the bad reputation of the regime change policy that the US was pursuing from 2003 onwards, there's been great reluctance to say anything about domestic politics in Russia. But there's also been great reluctance to judge the Russian people on the basis of what is happening. These are people that have been under dictatorship or various, forms of dictatorship forever. And, how Russia is going to evolve is a question that is beyond the influence of the West.
I think one of the problems we have is that there is a certain overload, that there are tasks that are immediate, and this task, for example, the support of Ukraine militarily, various other questions that we've talked about. And the idea to overplan, that is to anticipate where Russia will be 5 years from now and what kind of architecture will come up, is something that, in my opinion, is probably not as fruitful as making sure that we win the war. And, you may have Donald Trump in the White House in 2025. And if you have Donald Trump in the White House and you've made a plan based on the consistency or the trajectory of how current American politics works, your plan is not going to be worth much. So I guess I'm not trying to argue against the concept of planning. It's a great question. Where does Russia fit in? I'm just not sure we're at a point yet where we have the foundation on which we can build a coherent notion of how we deal with Putin, post-Putin, and Russia at this point.
And that will be the conclusion. Before to go back to the stage, I would like to say a few thank you to the organizer for the opportunity of this discussion, and also more generally to the possibility to have these 2 days of interesting and engaging conversations. Thank you to the audience for attending, listening, and asking a few questions. And please join me to thank our excellent speakers for this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Romain, and all the panelists for bringing new perspectives into our vibrant exchange of ideas. Next two panels will be focusing on the situation in the Black Sea region. For the first one, turbulent waters, Russian hegemony in the Black Sea, I welcome on stage Alina Inaye, Senior Fellow, German Marshall Fund of the US.
Good afternoon. I'm very happy to see that we almost have a full room for a discussion which is obviously very important, very timely, and very difficult, although all the problems were solved in the green room, so we are just coming here to tell you the solutions. I do want to invite the panelists to join me on the scene, and I will announce each of them as they will start speaking, so we don't do a long list of names right now. And do you have another speaker who should be up on the screen? Oh, hello, Mr. Lang. Can you hear us?
Hello, good morning, everyone. I can hear you very well.
As in almost every year since the forum started, which is 12 years ago now, we have a panel on the Black Sea. We have a panel on the Black Sea because we are in Romania and the Black Sea is important for Romania. But in the last few years, in the last 2 years at least, we are having a panel on the Black Sea because the Black Sea region is a theater of war, because the security of the Black Sea and of the region is increasingly more complex and more difficult with the war in Ukraine, but not only with the war in Ukraine, with everything that is going on now in the Middle East and with the conflicts which are somewhat surrounding us, and with the great powers, to use a term which was very much used in the history of Romania, with the great powers being preoccupied with a lot of other things. We'll be trying to untangle the security of the Black Sea, what is needed for the security of the Black Sea, obviously what is lacking, and if anything can be done. As I said, with 5 wonderful speakers, and I'm very happy that we have here people who are extremely knowledgeable and very involved in the security of the Black Sea. And I will start with our Romanian speaker, Iulian Fota, who is the State Secretary with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Romania, and ask you, well, pretty much directly, how safe is the Black Sea? I'm talking about the sea itself. I'm talking about the region, and what do you think, as a Romanian, is still missing for the region to be as secure as possible at this moment and in the future?
So, good morning to everybody, and thank you for having me. Coming from the host countries, I was convinced I will be the last one in this panel, but anyway, I will do my best to break the ice. How safe is the Black Sea for the moment? Black Sea is far from being safe, but on the other hand, if you look at the strategic balance between Russia and Ukraine, and I think that Ukraine did an excellent thing. And that's why now the strategic balance seems to be in a better shape. Ukraine had a very successful counteroffensive, you know, on the Black Sea, and I think this is a fact which is sometimes ignored. If you look at the whole counter-Ukrainian offensive, which is successful in my opinion, definitely the most important achievements are on the Black Sea. Russia lost important capabilities in the last few months. They are forced to withdraw. They are looking for a harbor now on Georgian soil because that harbor in Abkhazia, where the Russians are planning, you know, to build a secondary naval base, is official Georgian territory. And I think, and of course, and also we have to underline the fact that the situation seems to be a little bit better also because our Turkish friends are doing a great thing, you know, not letting the Russians to come with their ships from the Mediterranean. So I think that all aspects put it together, the Ukrainian bravery and the very smart way they are using, you know, all kind of naval capabilities, and the fact that Turkey is very, very tough on their attitude on not letting the Russians to increase the number of capabilities, I think bring us in the situation we have today. And it's not an accident that the number of ships, you know, coming to Odessa and leaving Odessa is growing, because I see that definitely Russia has some operational difficulties, you know, when it comes to their continuous will to control the situation in the Black Sea. So thanks to Ukrainians and thanks to our Turkish friends who are doing a great thing, not letting the Russians to bring more ships into the Black Sea, the situation seems to be a little better. And I hope that the situation will be even better, because we will end soon negotiations with Turkey and with Bulgaria for trilateral countermining, which also will help for safer waters, you know, at least when it comes to our territorial waters. And finally, the strategy is better also from the political point of view, because I see a better or a more defined interest, you know, for Western countries like France or US, or for organizations like NATO, EU for the Black Sea, which is also to be taken into consideration.
You're reminding me at least that everything is relative, because you keep saying that it is better, but it also it's a matter of what we are comparing it with. But I will see what the others will have to say about their assessment of the situation. And because you're talking about the interest of other countries in the Black Sea and in the Black Sea region, I do want to turn to Thomas Lenk, who is the head of division for Ukraine and the Black Sea with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Germany. And Thomas, Germany does have an interest in the Black Sea. There is going to be a hearing, as far as I understood, in Germany on the Black Sea. So there are more actions taken by Germany to show not only the interest in the Black Sea, as I was saying, but also very strong support to Ukraine. However, there are voices within the expert community, but not only. There are voices who are wondering how long the commitment, Germany's commitment to the current policy it has with Russia, against Russia, towards Russia, how long this is going to be actually sustainable, and people start, fear would be too much said, as I said, having concerns about a possible 180, yet another 180 degrees turn when it comes to Germany's policies towards Russia. How relevant are these concerns? How well connected to the reality are those concerns? If you can, please tell us.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm really grateful for the invitation to be present at this panel. On your last question, yet another 180-degree turn, I would not buy the assumption that there has been a 180-degree turn, because we have always been supportive of Ukrainian independence. And let me remind you, Germany was one of the main drivers to stop the Russian expansion in 2014 by driving and pushing for as hard as possible at that time sanctions against Russia. And in a way, it worked to stop this expansion then. This is not saying that we have not learned since, and I think the word Zeitenwende in a way symbolizes our way of learning about the nature of the Russian regime at the moment. So I think we can all be assured that the support of Germany for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence of Ukraine is fully unbroken. We will support Ukraine as long as it takes, and that means also that we will take commitments to support Ukraine well beyond the end of this war. You all know about the G7 statement from Vilnius this July, and the bilateral commitments of most of our countries to talk with Ukraine about long-term security. Having said that, maybe one word on the Black Sea. One of the guiding questions for this panel is the Black Sea a Russian lake, and will it remain so? And I think this is something we all have to ask ourselves. Maybe we have been a bit we've been looking away in a certain way when Russia made fait accompli in the Black Sea, even before the annexation of Crimea in 2014. There's a consistent string of moves to occupy the ground in the Black Sea, to get control militarily over more and more of the area. So this, in a way, this is the past, and it's high time that we wake up to this past and get aware of it. When it comes to the future, I think the Black Sea can actually be called a European lake, and since this week, more than ever, very soon, all the neighboring countries to the Black Sea, except for Russia, will be either EU member states, EU candidate countries, such as Ukraine and Moldova, or have an EU, and Turkey, of course, or have an EU perspective, such as Georgia. I think I stop here and will be happy to continue later. Thanks.
Because we are talking about new potential member states, I do want to turn to a country which we hope in December is going to start to open negotiations for its EU accession. Stanislav Secrieru is the National Security Advisor of Moldova. Stanislav, I will ask you very, very simply and very bluntly, how secure is Moldova? How secure do you feel Moldova is? And what would Moldova need to enhance its security? And I'm not only talking about military security, although it's very, very important.
First, thank you for invitation. Amazing event, GMF and Aspen. Congratulations. If you ask me, the reading of situation, it's still tense and difficult, but much better than it was 1.5 years ago. If we look at the Black Sea, the reading of the situation from Moldovan perspective is that Russia was, before 2022, pushing for revisionism in the Black Sea. What happened in 2022 is the switch from gradual towards the high-paced, brutal revisionism, which obviously raised the security problems for Moldova. First, it was an existential threat for Moldova. If Ukraine would fall, Moldova would be next. There is no doubt for us. Secondly, it raised issues of economic resilience and security of Moldova, because for us, Danube and Black Sea is a lifeline through which we export but also import, our port in Giurgiulești. But then the third one was most important, is that what Russia was doing and still does in Black Sea is the challenge for international law. It's the challenge for rule-based order in the region. We are the small country. The protection for us is international law. Obviously, we strive for restoring international law in the region. This perception is actually reflected in our draft of national security strategy, in which we mentioned 4 times a Black Sea region. We mentioned Black Sea region in the context of insecurity. We mentioned Black Sea region in the context of our national security objectives. And we as well mentioned it in the context of lines of actions which we propose to do in order to restore peace and stability there. On our side, we do several things. First, we're investing in our armed forces. First time in 30 years, we are taking it seriously. because we see that the role of hard power, unfortunately, increased. Secondly, we do our best to support Ukraine. Yeah? On this level, we do bilateral support. For instance, we were helping Ukraine to prepare for this winter, with delivering electric equipment, which will help them to prepare for this difficult winter. We as well support all the initiatives on bilateral and diplomatic level. At the same time, we would like to see much bigger presence of European Union in the region, because we see that enlargement, European integration is another way to address security problems in the region. EU is becoming a security actor. EU is influencing the military balance in the region. EU is helping us through European Peace Facility, which as well contributes to modernization of armed forces. Well, while Russia cannot reach us militarily, we face the whole or myriad of hybrid threats. Yeah? Here we have to deal with disinformation, cyber attacks. We had last week first round of elections. We had cyber attacks on the critical infrastructure to disrupt the way the votes are counted and presented on the website. But at the same time, the biggest problem for us, and probably will stay for 2 years, is the illegal financing of political parties. This is how Russia is trying to influence our democratic processes, to abuse of a democratic process, but also to take back control over political and economic power in Moldova. On our side, there is a determination to conduct reforms, to move closer to EU, to help Ukraine, and to be part of any trilateral or multilateral initiatives on the Black Sea region level. We salute the initiative of Romania, Turkey, and Bulgaria to do the demining, because it helps us as well to conduct in a peaceful and normal way our economic activities via Danube to the Black Sea. I will stop here and... Yeah.
I will then turn to the southern part of the sea. We have been talking extensively about the northern part of the sea, and ask Ambassador Turk, who is, let me see if I get your title correctly, Director General for International Security Affairs with the MFA of Turkey. Is the Black Sea a Russian lake?
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And I would like to start by commemorating our founder, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. This is the date of commemoration. 85 million people in Turkey stopped life for a minute this morning, everywhere, on streets, at houses, offices, and also in abroad, even including in Bucharest. We had a ceremony in front of the Atatürk monument. And just also, I would like to start by also taking his fundamental guidance for Turkish nation, and I think which should be inspiring us all. Peace at home, peace in the world. This is our fundamental policy, and it will remain so. What he said about the alliance with Romania in 1934 after Balkan Pact, we sat together. For Turkey, the alliance with Romania is a source of ongoing happiness. I personally, the Turkish government, as well as the people of Turkey, all believe that the strength of our friends is a strength for ourselves. I declare and will always declare and remain true to my words that the power of Romania is as dear to us as our own power. Above all is the feeling that we are bound to stay together. In our hearts, Romania is praised as a brother and sister. So it's not a coincidence. Our fundamental policy, foreign policy, security policy is the same. So in this context, we come to the Black Sea, and the Black Sea, first by definition, is not a lake. It is a sea. It is a semi-enclosed, enclosed sea. And it's not going to be a Russian lake, or NATO lake, or European lake at all. It's going to be a sea for the literal countries, allies, and in this spirit, Romania, Bulgaria, and Turkey now started to prepare a mine countermeasure task group. This is also exactly the tasking from NATO Vilnius Summit. Paragraph 79 of Vilnius Summit, just we had in July recently, says that all 31 heads of state and government agreed to support the allied regional efforts to uphold safety, security, freedom of navigation in the Black Sea and in accordance with Montreux Convention. And here I come to the rules-based order or international law. Montreux Convention is part and parcel and fundamental piece of international law and regulations, rule of order, whatever you call it, in the Black Sea for 87 years, since 1936. It survived the Second World War. It survived the Cold War. It survived the Russia-Georgia War. It survived the annexation and occupation of Crimea. It even survived the most recent war. Why? Because it is such a convention which really provides strategic stability in the Black Sea itself. The conflicts in the Black Sea region are all on land. There is not a battle in the maritime domain. So this is very important to recognize. The only real danger are the drifting mines in the Black Sea, the sea surface, and we are taking care of it. With Romania, Bulgaria, we will form a mine countermeasure group, and we will take care of this risk and threat altogether. So this is my answer to your question. It's not a lake, it's a sea for littoral countries, first of all. But if the European Union also would like to take Turkey as a member soon, it may become more influential in the Black Sea to the extent it is ready for that. Otherwise, the longest coast of Black Sea is Turkey, my German friend. You will not have a Black Sea as you define. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this. One thing which I noticed from your remarks is that we got used to the war. We got used to having a war in the Black Sea. Mr. Fota starting by saying, it's a little bit better. It's better than it was last year. And everybody, we are all, even myself at times, I find myself referring to these days and accepting that the war is there and the war is going to be there and trying to adjust to it. And I turn to the American on the panel because we are talking about the interest of big states, of big countries, of great powers in the Black Sea. Everybody is saying, including the American president, that, or most of the countries are saying that they're going to support Ukraine as long as it takes. But as a friend here in the room would probably tell us again, it would be better if they would say, we support Ukraine as much as it takes. So the war is actually over, and we can actually talk about the security of the Black Sea. How, from your point of view, how do you see the support that the U.S. is going to continue to give to the region, the interest that is going to continue to have in the region, given everything that is going on and will be going on in your country, and what should the U.S. do to further enhance the security of the region?
Thank you very much, Elena. I will address those questions as part of my presentation of the Atlantic Council's soon-to-be-published strategy for the Black Sea, if I might.
I forgot to introduce you, Stephen, but go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'll introduce myself. I need no introduction, I guess. Stephen Shapiro, I'm with the Atlantic Council, with the Scowcroft Center, and it's my honor to represent them, and we are grateful for the invitation to participate in this terrific forum. We have a Black Sea Strategy task force which was set up at the same time that Congress mandated the State Department to conduct its own lead agency review of the U.S. government's strategy. I find it interesting that Congress needed to tell the State Department to do this, but nonetheless, they have. We're not going to see that document, but the Atlantic Council's paper will be presented. I'll give you the highlights here. There isn't earth-shattering news, but what is important is that the Atlantic Council is lending its very important voice to these points. So we acknowledge, of course, that the Black Sea is a critical geostrategic intersection, desperately in need of a strategy and Western attention. We know that Russia exploits the seams of instability in the Black Sea states, in the littoral states, both overtly and covertly. Its aggression also threatens global food security, international economic security, and the viability of international legal frameworks, which are so important to states like Moldova, as you explained. With respect to Ukraine and the war, we believe, in fact, that it's more likely than not that Ukraine can expel Russian forces from its territory provided it receives the materiel that it requires, which we all know about: long-range fires, air power and air defense, artillery, ammunition, and technologically superior weapons. The problem, as you asked in your question, is the risk of time, that sanctions and popular support will erode over a period of time, whether through fatigue or political division, as you're seeing, in fact, in the United States and Europe itself right now. So, in fact, this emphasizes that Ukraine must win its war soon. And in order to do that, this means that the United States, NATO, and the EU must maximize today all the available tools while they are still effective and politically viable. Stabilizing the region, we understand, requires more than just Ukraine winning. It also requires an enhancement of NATO's presence in Romania and Bulgaria, providing security assistance to Black Sea states to strengthen their deterrence and defense capabilities, leveraging sanctions to get Russian troops out of Georgia and Transnistria, and most importantly, early membership in NATO, EU, OECD, and the 3 Cs initiative for the Black Sea states that are not in those organizations today. Removing the Russian military threat and integrating Black Sea states into those Western organizations or European organizations, we believe will set the conditions for a peaceful and prosperous region. With your permission, Madam Chair, I will go on to a specific proposal that is not part of the Atlantic Council's paper, but it's we dubbed the Shapiro thesis, and it's with complete respect to my new best friend, Basat, that I make this suggestion. In fact, I appreciated your remarks because by citing Montreux and your adherence to the terms of Montreux, you actually make my case. So this proposal is one to call for full compliance with Montreux. And by that I mean, and the goal of this is to enhance Black Sea stability, to reduce Russian attacks on Ukraine grain ports, storage, and ships. And here I do disagree that there's no surface warfare. There indeed is surface platform and naval contestation. A third-party ship was hit just 2 days ago, and a man killed in that endeavor. This also enhances the ability of Ukraine to get its grain out, and Moldova to have its commercial lifeline. With grain flowing, food moves, global food prices may fall, and I note that, in fact, I don't think that from the statistics I saw, Mr. Fota, the grain corridor visits into Odessa ports actually has fallen down to like 1.5 ships per day from a high of 20 some odd early in the period. So we need to reverse that, and this proposal is designed to do that. It also will provide some coastal defense to Romania and Bulgaria, and in the process Moldova, and provide some income to Ukraine's courageous farmers. So it's with full acknowledgement that Turkey is an essential partner, not only in the Black Sea region, but in the entire region, that I make this suggestion. And this is with respect to Turkey's purported ban on non-belligerent warships transit through the Straits. This is in contravention of the Montreux Convention's provisions. We know that Article 19 specifically permits non-belligerent warships to transit the Straits in times of war when Turkey has not declared itself threatened by imminent war and when it was not a belligerent itself. So at this moment, that would be the condition. Nonetheless, we cannot sugarcoat the effect of this ban, and the ban is a perception ban or a legal ban, which I disagree with, but the result of the ban is that we cede the field to the Russian Navy. It's the only active Navy in the Black Sea, and its ability to launch cruise missiles into residential neighborhoods in Ukraine demonstrates how important it would be to undo that. So I would call on Turkey to withdraw its ban on non-belligerent warships transiting the Straits. And perhaps it means that, perhaps you don't have to withdraw it, you just say that you really didn't mean non-belligerent nations, because when you view your foreign minister's statement, it's ambiguous, but it has been interpreted and taken to mean a complete ban. The purpose of this would be to allow warships in to conduct grain convoys out from the Odessa ports. That itself would be a deterrent to Russian attacks, as those Western multinational convoys, which we would hope would include, if not be led by, Turkey in that respect. So Russia would be deterred from attacks on ports, storage, and ships as a result of the convoy's mere presence, which can be, in fact, constant by rotating 21 days in and out. NATO hasn't been present in the Black Sea for over 2 years. And so NATO should work with Turkey to remove that ban, or at least the widespread misperception that it may, in fact, lawfully impose one, because it cannot. In addition, Montreux permits Black Sea powers to come and go with notice to Turkey. Of course, it's a 8-day notice under the convention. So the proposal continues that outside of the Black Sea, we reflag to Romania surplus naval vessels who could then be driven home to provide coastal defense and convoy assistance for Ukraine grain ships without any duration or size restrictions under Montreux, because they would belong to a Black Sea power. Likewise, we would reflag merchant vessels to Romania, who can then bring them home and retrofit them in their substantial shipyards to provide small naval vessels for coastal defense. These would be anti-mine, mine sweeps, anti-sub, anti-air, coastal patrol. And in this regard, I know of your involvement in creating the demining task force, and that really is a first step in this, and it's to be applauded. And longer term, we would call on the EU and NATO to help develop riparian warship construction in Romania and Bulgaria. So with President Erdogan leading the way for both Black Sea stability and global food security, supported by NATO, this well-intentioned proposal to a good friend and partner for full compliance with Montreux and not selective compliance or blurred compliance, we believe could, or I believe, could change the course of the war. So with that, thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Obviously, everybody can see that he's a very good lawyer. But thank you for not making it extremely legalistic. If you do want to reply, you have the opportunity to reply, but then that doesn't work. But then I also want to take 2 questions from the room, so please go ahead.
Thank you. And I respect, of course, what you have just said. It happens to be the case that I was director for maritime and aviation for 5.5 years, also implementing the Montreux Convention, including during the Russia-Georgia war in 2008. So reading the Montreux Convention alone and making interpretations would not be sufficient, my good friend. Even if they are well-intentioned, there is an acquis of implementation of 87 years. And you need to consult with me closer about that. And in this context, I have to say that all the Russian ships belonging to Russian Black Sea Naval Fleet also have the right to return to the Black Sea according to Montreux Convention.
If they were separated from their base.
They are separated. They are outside the Black Sea, more than 20. I'm not going to give you the exact figure, but more than 20. Why can't they come back? Because we have persuaded Russians that it would be better for them to stay outside the Black Sea. The Moscow cruiser, the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Naval Fleet, was hit by 2 Neptune missiles not launched by a ship from land. So any ship coming to Black Sea, because it's an enclosed sea, can be hit from anywhere in the Black Sea. So if United States is prepared to enter into a war with Russia involving NATO, involving nuclear weapons, and we will start the 3rd World War, then I think we have to make a more serious discussion about the complications we may be facing. And also, we should not forget the other war now, which started just to the south of Turkey, which was so brutal. In only 1 month, the number of civilians killed in this war are far more than the total number of civilians killed in 2 years war from Russia to Ukraine. So this is also something going on. It may have repercussions everywhere, including on Ukraine. By the way, I have just read Economist. The Ukrainian Chod is not so optimistic about the situation of the war. He's talking about a stalemate, and he talks about a World War type attrition war. So how long we can continue under these circumstances? We need to see the 360-degree, all the threats and risks around us, and then, really can make more meaningful, maybe, proposals for all of us. So we are implementing Montreux Convention in spirit and in letter. We are so confident about this, and also I think NATO generals are also aware of the fact that this is maybe in our best interest. Thank you very much.
I do not want to turn it into a conversation on the Montreux Convention, although if you do have it, please invite me as well, because I'm very interested. You said something in your presentations of the Atlantic Council report, which is the importance of removing the Russian threat. And I haven't heard yet on this panel how this is going to actually be accomplished sooner, we hope, rather than later. But maybe by taking a few questions from the room, we can come to the answer of these questions. So I don't know where the microphone is.
Here. It's right here.
Oh, Hannah, please go there. Rufin, start asking your question if you're first.
Thank you so much. My name is Hanna Hopko. I represent Ukraine. So I think when we are talking about the freedom of navigation in the Black Sea area, we have to start from demilitarization of the Black Sea. So my question is to the representative of Turkey. So first of all, Turkey has the most powerful military potential in the Black Sea region from NATO members there. Of course, we in Ukraine are thankful to Turkish government for observing the provisions of the Montreux Convention, and not allowing ships of Russian Navy from other fleets into the Black Sea. But Russian containers ships loaded with 122mm shells manufactured at the factory near Syrian Aleppo are headed to Russian Novorossiysk via the Bosphorus. This is ammunition which later kills Ukrainian soldiers. So actually we would like Turkey to join sanctions against Russia and not to help to circumvent the sanctions through Turkey and others. Because I think in the future, Turkey as a member of NATO should also be part of sanctions policy of Western nations, because it's not enough to be as long as it takes with Ukraine. It's important to adopt as fast as possible all decisions, including confiscation of Russian assets, more than 350 billion sovereign assets, because this would be the economic blow, not allowing Russia to produce more rockets, cruise ballistic missiles, kamikaze drones, which are terrorizing Ukrainian civilians, especially before the winter season. So I do believe that Black Sea region is the NATO and the EU region, not Russian lake. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Let me take two more questions and then I'll turn to the panelists. Go ahead.
Thank you. Rufin Zanfir, Global Focus Center. My question will go to Mrs. Shapiro and the German expert in the panel. Mrs. Shapiro, you've mentioned the provisions, some of the provisions that the Black Sea strategy that your organization is putting together, and thank you for this. But knowing the footprint, the important footprint that your organization and you yourself, sir, have in DC, I was wondering how much of this strategy, the one that you drew, juxtaposes the one that the Congress is going to put together. And then the subsequent question to the German expert would be how much these two, I mean, knowing that Germany also is putting together a Black Sea strategy, how much of these two documents are creating a synergy? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another question? Did you want to ask? Please go ahead. Is there? You have to go to the microphone. Thank you.
Hello, I got a question for all of you. What are the perspectives of Black Sea countries after the aftermath of Ukraine war? May I repeat again? What are the perspectives of the Black Sea countries after the war of Ukraine?
So once
the war.
Once the war is over? That's
Yeah, after the war is over.
Okay. Thank you.
That was the question for all of you.
Thank you. Should I start with
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm happy to be the focus. And first of all, I should like to answer the question about the circumvention on sanctions. So there is no circumvention of sanctions from Turkey. We, as a matter of principle, implement UN Security Council sanctions and restrictions. But exceptionally, we are also implementing sanctions restrictions for those goods coming from US and Europe and destined to Russian Federation. But in this context, what are those things which are being questioned? Are usually dual-use goods, and they have to be stopped at the source. So a European company, for example, can export its good through third countries, not only from Turkey, because we are stopping them in Turkey. Since 1st of March, there is no customs service for such goods going to Russian Federation. But there are 193 countries in the world, and they are all doing this trade. And I'm not going to mention all of them name by name. With regard to ammunition coming to Russian Federation, for example, stop, for example, North Korea if you can. Russia does not have a coast only in the Black Sea. It has coast also in the Baltic Sea, in the Arctic, in the Pacific. We have to have this broad vision. And therefore, the best solution is to work for peace as soon as possible. Of course, by respecting the territorial integrity and political unity of Ukraine. And we have worked hard on it. With regard to naval power also of NATO, NATO is present in the Black Sea. First of all, 3 allies are little countries. We have a significant navy, and maybe you have seen on 29th of October, the centenary of our republic, 100 pieces of ships passed through the Istanbul Strait. Yes. This was not our full navy. You can just imagine the number of ships we have in Turkish Navy is formidable. And therefore, we should not really demoralize ourselves. With regard to the post-war situation, we need to focus on energy. This is, I know, also your very attractive topic. And I am suggesting that, for example, I congratulate Romania for the discovery of 100 BCM gas in the Black Sea. We are also, as you know, working and extracting some gas from the Black Sea. 100 BCM, 100 billion BCM. This is, half of what Galkanish gas field in Turkmenistan produces. It produces 200 billion cubic meters of gas only from one gas field. 50 trillion cubic meters of gas fields. We have Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan. Also, this is one. And the other also sources we are going to rely on will be coming from the Middle East. But how can we be sure that this war going on in Gaza can lead to a greater regional war and conflict would also affect us all. So we have to really be prepared for future. We shouldn't be surprised once again. We were surprised with 9/11. We were surprised with the pandemic. We were surprised with the occupation of Crimea, and then Georgia, and then this war. So let's stop getting surprised and getting prepared seriously for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Lenk, there was also a question addressed to you, so if you can answer it briefly, please.
Yes, thanks. That was the question on the strategy. Well, I'm not aware of any strategy being written in Berlin at this time. But what I can say, we are vitally linked to the Black Sea basin, where 220 million Europeans living in that, along that waterway that leads from Constanza all the way to Rotterdam, and of which 1,000 kilometers run through Germany. So obviously, even from that point of view, there's vital interest of Germany, and I would argue also of the EU, in a free, peaceful, and prosperous development of the entire Black Sea region. And I think that would also answer the second question: how do we see the region in the future? I think there's a lot of potential still unused in the Black Sea, and we believe it's worthwhile thinking about having a more strategic approach to utilizing that future. In the immediate, of course, the challenge is security, and we are very grateful, pay tribute to the initiative by Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania on demining the waterway. And we are grateful also for the Romanian leadership in driving a discussion on the strategic opportunities that the Black Sea region presents. Thanks.
Stephen, there was also a question addressed to you on, I guess it was the strategy as well.
So thank you very much. With respect to reconciling the Atlantic Council strategy with that of the State Department, of course there is only one government, so it will be theirs. However, the Atlantic Council does have the opportunity through its reputation and its convening authority or powers to have our feelings known. I had hoped by the time I arrived in Bucharest, I would have a copy of the State Department's paper, and I've not been successful in getting that. So I can't actually comment on the substantive reconciliation. I apologize for that. With respect to my good friend's reference that Turkey is complying with the spirit and the letter of Montreux, I just have to read some of the letters of Montreux in Article 19 for those who are not fully familiar. Without going, just going to read one sentence. In time of war, Turkey not being belligerent, warships shall enjoy complete freedom of transit and navigation through the straits under the same conditions as those set forth in times of peace. It's not complicated. It's written in English. I even understand it myself, lawyer or not. And that would be a wonderful letter to comply with. With respect to 87 years of practice, I appreciate that can bend things, and we can discuss that. With respect to the question about Black Sea littoral states after the war, of course, I'm not in a position to answer that. Finally, well, I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
So then let's go to the littoral states.
Yeah, I will be brief. I think first about the end of war, we do hope that, and we will help Ukraine with all our available resources to restore fully control of its territory within the borders internationally recognized. Then about Moldova, the perspective is that Moldova will be an EU member state. We have an ambitious agenda until 2030. Second element is that we are important piece in this framework of solidarity lines. When the war stops, we hope to become part of reconstruction lines, which will be helping Ukraine to restore and rebuild its country. And then we will be, as well as a EU member state, a state which contributes to European security, but not also consumes European security. And we will do it by actively participating in EU operations and missions, but also sharing our experience how to fight against hybrid threats, the experience we are unwillingly accumulating and will be willing to offer to our partners.
So first of all, let me say a few words about demilitarization, because I think that we are only at the beginning of a new phase of international relations where we see a lot of remilitarization of foreign policy. So forget about demilitarization. I don't think that there are any chances too soon for that. So I continue to believe that if we want peace, we all have to be ready for war. As the old Romans said, si vis pacem para bellum. So if you want peace, and we all want peace, we should be ready for war. This is the best. This is, in my opinion, the best way to deter those who are looking to use their military force as an advantage, in reaching their political goals. Now, speaking about what Romania will do after, it's very important to see in what kind of terms the conflict, the Russian aggression will end, because there are few possibilities here. I don't want to speculate. But on the other hand, Black Sea is not only a war zone. I mean, yes, we have war in the Black Sea, but this is in the northern part. The southern part of the Black Sea continues to be an area where connectivity is important and where countries, are doing their best to do trade, to do commerce, and of course to promote, to increase their prosperity, promoting, their relations. And I think that, Romania, we do our best to manage both agendas in the same time. The war agenda, which is sometimes overwhelming us, but also we don't want to lose from our side the connectivity agenda, which is very, very important for the future. And when the war will stop, and in a way or other that will happen, I think that connectivity will be a big chance for all the countries in the Black Sea. Yes, energy is there. We are also looking for gas. We are also building platforms. And I think that some consequences are here with us to stay after the Russian aggression. A very open discussion now we have about how to protect this critical infrastructure for whatever the future will bring, and I think that also we have to recover back, our cooperation in the Black Sea, because there are all kinds of formats of cooperation who for the moment are frozen, because there is a big elephant in the room, and we will have to also to go back, to the agendas who are waiting us to see how can we save, or how we will proceed with the next stages, in regarding cooperation on Black Sea issues, because Black Sea, as I said, is not only about war; it's also about environmental protection. It's about, in a way, solving the problems, environmental problems created by this war, who are very serious and significant ones. And of course, I really hope that moment will come soon, and we will already, make the first steps to forget these very, very complicated and dangerous situations which we have for the moment. And of course, nothing good will happen without guaranteeing, the territorial integrity, the sovereignty, the independence of all countries around the Black Sea. And when we talk about that, it's not only Ukraine as a state. We have also complicated issues regarding our Georgian friends. And if I look to some recent statements coming from Moscow, neither Moldova, it is safe or protected, fully protected, from some kind, some how to say, complicated future intentions.
On this note, that the Black Sea is not only about the war; it's also about the future peace and also current preparations for the future peace. But a war still needs to be won before that. I do want to thank the panelists, and I hope that you'll continue the conversation, as I said. And thank you all for being very involved in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alina, and all the panelists for digging in such a difficult topic. And now it's time for a break. Enjoy your conversations. exchanges of ideas during the breaks and are energized, and you are all energized for our next sessions. I welcome on stage now Robert Lupițu, Chief Editor at Calea Europeană, the moderator of the Danube Black Sea Economic Opportunities Panel.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. It's a pleasure to see you all and an honor to moderate this panel. I hope you all had a very good moment of coffee and you always also solved your Black Friday shopping, and now we can have a very fruitful and energetic exchange on views on this plenary session entitled Danube and Black Sea Economic Opportunities, a new field of economic opportunity and cooperation, and probably a very important strategic consequence of Russia's full-scale invasion in Ukraine, because a few years ago we wouldn't have imagined the possibility of bringing together Romania and countries from the eastern neighborhood in such a very important moment, and now we see how important is the security nexus and also the energy nexus and the transport nexus between the Black Sea and the Danube, and also its economic opportunity. In order to have a very, very fruitful discussion, I invite on stage our distinguished panelists, Mr. Dumitru Alaiba, Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Economic Development and Digitalization in the Republic of Moldova, and also Aspen alumnus. Please, Mr. Alaiba. A big round of applause if it's possible. Thank you. Also, Mr. Florin Marian Spătaru, State Councillor, Government of Romania, former Minister of Romania of Economy in Romania, and also Aspen alumnus. Please, Mr. Minister. We have together with us Mrs. Oana Cristina Popescu, the Ambassador of the European Union to Montenegro. Please. And last but not least, we have together with us online with virtual connection, Mr. Timofey Milovanov, President of the Kyiv School of Economics. Thank you for being with us, and also a big round of applause for you as well. I hope you can hear us. We will start the panel. I have to say from the beginning that we will have a very blitz panel, 35 minutes of exchange and discussions, and I will go with a general question to all the panelists in order to ask you, because our panel is entitled Black Sea Economic Opportunities, but I would also stress a very powerful word, that it's reconstruction, because it's an opportunity to reconstruct Ukraine after the war and also seize the opportunity of our influence in the region when it comes to Romania, but also to other countries in the eastern part of the European Union. And I want to ask you, in a 2 minutes intervention of each, please state what are the most important opportunities, but also challenges that we have to think about when it comes to this nexus of the Black Sea and the Danube. Please, Mr. Alaiba, you have the first. It's open, yeah.
It's open, yeah. Yep. Well, good day, and as we will have a very short intervention, well, it's my pleasure to be here. I would call them needs, because the region is in desperate need for investment and reconstruction, and the war has only exacerbated the situation and the needs of the entire region. And as the way we want to regard it, and the way we see things, is that economy is the best guarantee for the long-term stability of a country. Now, as Ukraine war still rages, for me personally, it is difficult to call opportunity what follows. However, the reality is that there will be investments into Ukraine and into Moldova following this war and following the invasion, with the successful with the Ukraine being victorious in this unjust war, and Moldova is definitely going to play a role. Moldova is definitely well, we are already, as was discussed in the previous panels as well, we are already giving all the support for Ukraine that there is through our logistics, through the grain corridors, through solidarity lanes, through cargo going back and forth through our country, because the reality is, if you want to reach right now the most damaged parts of Ukraine, the road lies through Moldova, and in terms of logistics, this is important. What we are doing right now is we are investing in logistics. We are investing in our railroad infrastructure in order to be even more helpful and in order to be even more supportive while the war goes on and once the war is over. The economic consequences of the war on Moldova have been dire. Last year we were beginning the year with very good numbers, but 24th of February 2022 happened and all numbers basically reversed. We ended the year with negative growth. However, we are hopeful to have positive growth this year. For that, we are again investing in infrastructure, investing in logistics, improving our business climate, investing in digitalization and many other endeavors that we have in the government of Moldova, exactly to be ready for when peace and stability and calmness finally comes back to the region, because that is what we need right now the most, all of us in the region. Thank you. I won't take too much of your time because.
Thank you very much indeed. A country with a big heart, Moldova, that wants to improve its way of life and also its democratic future. Mr. Spătaru, as well, further economic opportunities and challenges, considering also the need to develop the routes, the transportation routes in the Black Sea and also between the Black Sea and the Danube, please.
There are almost 2 years time when Europe passed one of the biggest crises we never expected before. And that put together a lot of efforts and a lot of money to support Ukraine. Let's be very clear here. The war in Ukraine should stop. And the Ukrainian nation should decide on themselves how do they want to develop their country. Therefore, the aggression of Russia needs to stop, and Ukraine should benefit from all their territories. After that, we can think on how to reconstruct. But on the other hand, Romania and also Moldova supported Ukraine for the reconstruction already from the first day of the war, because we brought the Ukrainian people, we introduced them in the education, we put efforts to make sure that the life is continuing for the Ukrainian nation. This effort has to continue because Romania and Moldova have 2,300 kilometers of border. So this is the largest border Ukraine is having with two sister countries. What are the opportunities? The opportunities are very much related to the extension of the trading in the Caspian and the Black Sea, and connectivity in terms of energy supply and digital infrastructure, as well as production and proper utilization of the resources. We found out that in the Black Sea area now, there are a lot of possibilities to support not only the ambitions of Europe, but also to support the other countries with proper food, with proper materials, with proper equipment. And this has to continue fulfilling the same principles which has been adopted by the European Union when we had the pandemic, and to reach the objectives of 2050 of decarbonization. No reconstruction should be made without proper steel, with proper aluminium, with proper glass, with proper construction materials. And therefore, the opportunities are laying there. Romania and Moldova should develop and sustain its own business. It's very difficult right now because, you know, we say that we might restrict the accession of those materials which are not respecting the same principles, but we are not very efficient at the European level to do it. And therefore, we have to continue to support those sectors, especially the ones who are consuming a lot of energy and the ones who are very much depending on the raw materials coming from the distance. Romania is also having 9 shipyards. And the water transport is of paramount importance to get the independence. If we are going to work together to put in motion the capability of Romania on building vessels and create the trading routes which is connected many of these Asian countries with Romania and Moldova, and create the routing of the goods on containers or bulk to the west of Europe, that is the way of going forward. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we have been in Brussels together with Minister Alaiba, and we are talking about the global gateway, the way of connecting countries outside the European Union and working together, following the same principles. That's the way forward. That's the way we have to bring the values together and integrate also countries outside of the European Union through the Black Sea in order to make sure that this goal is going to be achieved. Let's do not forget that by 2050 we have to make a greener economy, 90% decarbonization. Let's do not forget that we want to invest a lot in energy, green energy. Where are the solar panels coming from? We should decrease our dependency, and let's do not forget that we should not create our independence by following another dependency. And that, in that sense, Romania and the Republic of Moldova and all the other countries, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, who are following the same principles, we should join forces in order to create in the Black Sea area a pole, an economic pole, which is supporting the ambitions of the European Union. Thank you.
Spot on, thank you. You mentioned Global Gateway. I would also say that Moldova right now is eligible for the Connecting Europe facility, and recently the European Commission also deployed some money for bilateral projects, Romania, the Republic of Moldova, for existing routes and also developing new ones. I would like to move to Mrs. Oana Cristina Popa, the ambassador of the European Union to Montenegro. We are discussing about the Black Sea and Danube economic opportunities, but maybe we can also keep in mind the fact that we have some lessons learned, what the European Union has been doing in the Western Balkans, for instance. And in terms of challenges and opportunities, what can the EU do for this region, considering its lessons learned with the Western Balkans?
Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak today on enlargement and cross-regional cooperation. We will come to it in this crucial geopolitical time. So I think it's very important to contextualize and put things in context when it comes to enlargement today. The unprovoked Russian aggression on Ukraine has given a whole new dimension to enlargement. Today, we have 10 countries in the enlargement package. Just 2 weeks ago, the Commission presented the enlargement package, the progress reports for the candidates, but also recommendations to open negotiations with Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia when the time is right, and Bosnia pending on certain reforms. This is a huge leap forward with enlargement back in the priorities of the European Union after a dormant, let's say, decade when Europe was more preoccupied with digesting the previous wave of enlargement. Also, alongside the enlargement package came the new growth plan for the Western Balkans, which was launched by President von der Leyen. And this is very important because this gives the economic dimension. The enlargement package, as it stands right now, is of course merit-based. The regatta principle stands. Countries have to fulfill the requirements of the acquis. But in addition to that, we have come to the realization that it's extremely important to prepare those countries for joining the single market. And the growth plan proposes exactly that, to give them the tools to prepare their own internal markets, and in the case of the Western Balkans, build the common regional market, because the Western Balkans are comprised by small countries which cannot survive individually, so they have to work together. In order to prepare them for accession to the single market. So this will go in parallel with the accession reform agenda, which of course has the rule of law at its core, alignment with the common foreign and security policy, but now this economic dimension is extremely important. Now what is also extremely important is that the momentum that Ukraine created, where basically Ukraine is pushing all this group from the back, the door is now open, but the countries have to walk through the door, so to speak. So they have to do their part of the work in order to access the money that is brought about by the growth plan. Also, it is important to build a connection between the Eastern neighborhood and the Western Balkans, with the Danube being the connecting part. The Black Sea and the Adriatic Sea have already been discussed together as part of the Three Seas Initiative, but this is nothing new. 20 years ago, we were looking at ways to connect the Black Sea and the Adriatic Sea. There are several ports on those two seas that can serve as a backbone for building connectivity on the sea, but also it is very important to build this connectivity on land, on rail. Digital and green transition, again, need to happen uniformly, because this is too big to be the prerogative of one country or another. This is a regional approach and a cross-regional approach. And from that point of view, I cannot stress enough that having a bigger enlargement package is actually good for enlargement, because it gives that impetus needed to push the process forward and to make the accession real and foreseeable in a palpable future. So I'm going to stop here, and there are a couple of other ideas that we can elaborate in the second round, or when we get questions from the public. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Now we move online to Mr. Timofey Milovanov, the president of the Kyiv School of Economics in Ukraine. So we are very much eager to see the view of Ukraine when it comes to the economic opportunities within the Black Sea and the Danube, also considering the fact that Romania is of paramount importance for two-thirds of Ukraine grains export and transit to the worldwide markets. And we are very much keen to know what are the challenges and opportunities that Ukraine sees ahead from this point of view. Please.
Thank you very much. Indeed, Romania, but the Black Sea region, North and Western Black Sea region are key for Ukraine, for food security in the region. And so the challenges and opportunities are identical. The first challenge and opportunity is security. Russia attacks infrastructure, destroys it. It now targets civilian ships and ports. And proper air defense in the region is going to be a must during this war and post-war, to ensure that the risks are low or minimized. So some version of closing the sky over the region is paramount. The second one is infrastructure. Building new infrastructure, investing in infrastructure, recovering infrastructure will provide amazing opportunities for economic development in the region. this is the source of logistics, the place for logistics. But I also worry that the approach that many of the countries have been taking, including Ukraine and neighbors, is not fully exploiting the opportunities for joint value creation. For example, there could be a transnational or transborder infrastructure investment fund. There could be some joint private equity funds investing in companies operating in the both transportation, logistic, but also other industries adjacent to the logistics. These opportunities are not being exploited because the thinking typically is a zero sum among the governments, among politicians, and often among investors too. It's us versus them. It's one border versus another. So moving forward, thinking about joint projects, creating incentives that are aligned within joint projects, I think is the way to unlock these opportunities and overcome the challenges. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, you stressed quite interesting the fact that the security situation is both a challenge and an opportunity for us to better develop. And yeah, probably the regional cooperation is, as I mentioned, a very important consequence of Russia's war against Ukraine, because now we managed to build trust among our nations and our common interests. I would like to open the floor for questions. We have a point of microphone over there, so everyone who wants to ask a question should go at that point of the microphone. Firstly, raise their hand, and then go over there, do a sprint, or if we do not have a question at this precise moment, but I encourage you to do that, I will have a question that maybe can relate to both Mr. Alaiba and Mr. Spătaru. And can you provide examples of infrastructure projects in the Danube Black Sea regions that have been developed or that you plan to develop, or also existing projects that need to be further expanded to enhance these economic opportunities despite the ongoing conflict that Russia has caused in Ukraine? Who wants to go first? Mr. Alaiba, maybe Mr. Spătaru, yes.
Yes. First of all, now you see that there is this priority on connecting the eastern part of Romania with, let's say, with Constanța area and with Bucharest. A7 and A8, they are already in the master plan and they will make the connection. This highway is also going to attract trading from Ukraine and Moldova. Second, we also have a development program on the electrification of the railway. Railway should also play a role in container trading and connect the containers from one hub, from a container hub from the eastern part of Romania, bringing to Constanța, and then from Constanța to be placed in either in Western Europe or to go in outside of the Black Sea and in the other areas. There is this intermodal project in Galați, which has been already allocated 170 million lei, which are going to be invested in the coming future, also together with the European funds, and that will make also the connectivity of Ukraine through Moldova and Galați and Braila area in order to develop the container projects. That would mean that we'll restart to use the biggest highway of Romania. We forgot to do that, and that's Danube. And on the Danube side, we can. There are also discussions together with the Ministry of Transport. It will be water transport strategy, which is going to be developed, which would involve the development of the harbors, multimodal hubs, and will use these capacities in order to attract cargo and also move cargo in the other areas.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Aleba?
Thank you. I would start with saying that it's been 30 years that we unfortunately mostly ignored logistics. And nowadays, well, before the war, our logistics infrastructure was barely supporting the needs of the Moldovan economy. And with the increased pressure of the Ukraine transit, again, to support Ukraine, we have to all make our contribution and chip in these times. However, it's taking a toll on our logistics infrastructure, and that is going to be and already is a major priority for the government, for Moldova. And here, the opportunities are huge, because if we look at the map, as I said, Moldova is an inevitable transit point. And logistics, again, is about speed, it's about waiting time, minimum waiting time, maximum speed. That would drive costs down, and at some point it's about the euro per kilometer per minute, and that is what makes commercial and business sense to use a country as a platform for transit, for example, for moving cargo. 10% of the Ukrainian grains, over 10%, that's at least what we have in our estimates, is going through the port of Giurgiulești. And that is, Ukraine is big, and the production is massive. Here I mean 300 meters on the Danube. This is how big the entire infrastructure is. Now, even there, by investing in another perch, by putting in place faster, bigger equipment, more efficient, we can support Ukraine much more, and we can support the regional economy much more. Railroads. There are portions in Moldova of railroad where the speed has to be 5-10 kilometers per hour because of poor infrastructure. That's the reality. That's what we have to fix urgently, because again, it's about the cost per kilometer per minute. That's what makes up efficiency in the end. And if we look at the map again, we are the transit point for most of rail cargo that is to be shipped from and to Ukraine. The line enters Moldova and then bifurcates to the north and to the south. And the port of Constanța is right here to the south from Ungheni. And that means, again, having substantial investment into logistics by using the PPP models or any other model of cooperating with private in order to involve private investments, in order to streamline processes and to make this changing of gauge, for example, because again, it's about time. It's about how much it takes you to ship one container from Constanța, for example, to Odessa or further. And if that one container has to wait for 4 hours until you change the gauge, which is the reality right now, that will translate into pressure for the goods that you shipped, and that would increase the price of your operations. And now it can take 4 hours, which is more or less the time that it takes right now, or it can take 20 minutes, which is possible in other dry ports that you have in Slovakia, for example, in Serbia and whatnot. So that is the general, and that's only transport logistics. We are looking at the digital infrastructure. We're looking at business support infrastructure and many others in order to increase the regional capacity of the logistics infrastructure to support a massive pressure at its core in essence. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have a question over there, I guess.
Hello.
Oh, and also over there, yeah, Rufin. But yeah, Mr. Pogonaru first, and then Rufin will take both questions. Thank you.
It's a comment first and also a question. It's a question, it's a comment on the mindsets which we have about Ukraine, Moldova, and what is happening. First of all, I start by saying that whatever I'm saying should be interpreted in the sense that we want victory of Ukraine. No question about this. Let's do all the efforts for this. But let's accept also that we have to have two kinds of mindset. I am a businessman which is exporting at this moment in Ukraine, has connection with Moldova, so I have real business happening now. So there are two kinds of mindsets. The mindsets of war economy, where we are building specific infrastructure for the efforts of war and everything. But we should have the mindset of the future normality, future economic normality. And believe me, I am impressed sometimes how normal life is happening in Ukraine. I mean, I can tell you, do you know that there are retailers in Ukraine, they hate plastics, and there are retailers which are importing at this moment green bags, biodegradable bags, avoiding to spoil the country with plastic. This is a thing which is happening. People are living, are normal. And we as business people, we have to build connection and trust between us, leaving apart the war. We don't know, we want victory tomorrow, but we don't know how long this will last. We don't have even more with, in the context of accession. And I was involved in many years ago, by the way, meeting with Ukrainian businessmen in order to show best Romanian practice in the accession process and prepare the future normality. So there are things which, I mean, let's have the war economy, but let's discuss much more about the normal economy. Let's discuss, for example, how we are starting in Romania to apply digitalization, franchises like European computer driving license, teaching the public servants what they have to know as far as digitalization is concerned. Let's extend and discuss about the green economy, biodegradable, and so on. This is happening. So I think it's very important to be very focused on the war economy, but at this, don't forget that normal life is still happening. Business should happen, and you have to focus more on the bottom-up things, creating this mindset of cooperation and trust at the level of local business from Ukraine, Moldova, and so on.
Thank you. We will consider it as a very good comment that brings a very good asset to our discussion. And if it's possible, we can go now to Rufin Zamfir for a question, and we will ask the organizers for an indulgence of 5 more minutes in order to be better equipped to wrap up this panel. Please, Rufin.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief. The question goes first and foremost to the Ambassador Popa, but I would also like to hear perhaps Mr. Alaiba, and if the Ukrainian professor is still with us, perhaps he has to offer a perspective on the question also. So, Your Excellency, you've mentioned the efforts, and then I have to salute the European efforts in bringing Moldova and Ukraine closer to a European family. Of course, all of us know that it's not sufficient, this. You need to learn to sell the successes. You need to learn to communicate on the successes. And I was wondering, how, from a strategic communication point of view, how can we, the European Union members, should advocate for the decision that was taken a couple of days ago in Brussels regarding the Republic of Moldova and Ukraine? And I have in mind mainly how can we sell, quote unquote, this success to those parts of these two countries that are not too keen in moving towards or closer to a Western type of democracy. Thank you. Thank you.
Please, Mrs. Popa, then we'll go to Mr. Milanov, and maybe a small comment from you, Mr. Alaiba. Please.
Thank you for your question. So first of all, let me tell you that enlargement has become a geopolitical necessity, and that is the main difference from what enlargement looked before the Russian aggression on Ukraine. And there are, of course, member states, 27 member states with different opinions, but what they all understand equally is that enlargement has become a geopolitical necessity. Now, how we'll translate that into practice? Like I said, it will take time. It is still a merit-based process, but it is important to start working because at this point, the process of preparing for the EU is equally important with the actual date of accession. I know that that is the main preoccupation of candidate countries, but the process is very important at this point. Also, let us not forget geography, because geography is extremely important. If we look at the Eastern neighborhood and the Western Balkans, the Western Balkans are surrounded by EU and NATO member countries, so that should definitely give a boost, but it's also in the direct interest of those countries to have the countries in. And it's even more important when it comes to Ukraine and Moldova, because that is the sort of final frontier. And if you know, there's nowhere else for them to go. They have to be in Europe. They are in Europe, they have always been in Europe, and it's a geopolitical necessity to be in Europe because otherwise the alternative doesn't simply exist.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Milovanov, sorry. He is still together with us? No, I don't think so. Mr. Aleba, if you want to have a small comment on that, maybe, and then Mrs. Potaru.
About how we can best sell our successes, my personal opinion is that actions speak for themselves. So the more work we do together, because what we need first and foremost is support in all the multiple reforms that we are undertaking. And it's already a reality that we have shortened this period from becoming a candidate country to the recommendation of the Commission. We're hoping to move even faster in the future, but that means a lot of activity, a lot of reforms, a lot of action that partly will speak for themselves. It will be much easier to sell a story when a country is moving fast towards a clear goal with clear results and with successful and quality reforms, not reforms that are done on paper just to tick the boxes and to report to Brussels about something that will never work. We have seen this in the past. Only a couple of years ago, this is the quality of the reforms that we were criticizing while being in the opposition, while being on the streets, basically. And this is a bad example of a country doing the reforms just to tick a box and to hope nobody will notice. So our approach is to do true reforms that will work in reality, that will change people's life and do them fast. And that is a much easier sell of a success in any capital.
Thank you very much. Since we are on extra time, 15 seconds, please,
Yes.
Mr. Sutar.
These countries who are going to access into the European Union, they will have access to the biggest treasure of the European Union, which is the single market. Standardization, the same rules, the access of the products into that will bring a lot of economy, which will mean jobs, which will mean higher added value, and that is something which needs to be sold because European Union is having one big treasure. That is the single market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And in order to conclude in a very hopeful manner, I would like you to complete the following sentence. By 2030, the Danube and Black Sea region will be?
Well, EU and NATO lake, you could say, almost.
Okay.
Just like the Baltics.
A very strong pillar into the single market of Europe.
Part of the most important connection in Europe.
Well, thank you very much for the panelists and for all of you being together with us. We will have now a technical break before the next panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert, and all the panelists for pointing out to opportunities because they give us hope and direction. Now, because we are moving on to the parallel session, and Robert was saying something about the technical break, my challenge now is to convince you that both sessions are very interesting and to make you attend somehow both of them. Maybe try them both, see how the discussion in the Heroes Room, the resilience of the global flows and regionalization of chains of production, which will be moderated by Ionuț Stanimir. And if you allow me to say, because I know Ionuț very well, I think the discussion will be pretty intense there. This will take place in the Heroes Room. It's like on my right, as you go on the hall. And for the panel that will start in 30 seconds here on the main stage, so the ones that want to remain here, please take your seats. The hard security and revival of defense industrial capacity in Europe. I invite on stage Martin L., columnist and analyst, Hospodarskie Noviny from Czech Republic. And I hope again...
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Good morning still. We didn't have a lunch. My name is Martin L. I work for Czech Economic Daily, and I will have a pleasure to talk with a couple of clever guys about how to revive defense industry in Europe. So please welcome on the stage Major General Remus Bondor, Chief of Strategic Planning Directorate, Defense Staff of Romania. Andrew Mikta, Director of the Scope of Strategy Initiative, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council of the United States in Washington. And Radu Tudor, Political and Defense Analyst. Gentlemen, take a seat. On the last note, it was cancelled by Emmanuel Ioana, General Director of RomArm, so we are going to speak about defense industry without defense industry being presented on the stage. So there is a microphone, and if there is anybody from the defense industry, please form the line there. We will have a couple of questions, or you will have an opportunity to speak to us, please. Gentlemen, let's start with General Bondor and with his remarks on where we are, because he's the end user of what we as a societies are supposed to produce on larger scale than we are producing now. General.
Thank you, Martin. I think it's okay.
Yes.
So, yes, indeed, we are the end users. And the Romanian Armed Forces is in a dynamic accomplishment of the building response to any threat that can come against the independence, sovereignty, and integrity of the country. And also, we are heavily engaged in fulfilling our engagements towards NATO and towards our partners. Let's talk about security, and we can divide security into two parts: hard security, that we will discuss today, and soft security. After the fall of the Iron Curtain, I think the threat in Europe, the hard security threats in Europe, were perceived as zero. I think we were dreaming for 1,000 years of peace, and all the energies into the defense sector moved towards soft security. It was a wave of concerns coming in 2001 when we engaged together into the war on terror, and we've started to deploy troops in Afghanistan and in Iraq, which boost a little bit the industry and the need for military equipment, but directed towards stability and support operation. Again, hard threats were zero. In our strategic documents, we were thinking that in the short, medium, and long term, there are no peer adversaries in the horizon. What was the consequences? The rate of consumptions, the replacement of the equipment, everything had a specificity that drove the industrial complex to diminish their production and to produce whatever was necessary for this type of threat. Suddenly, the clouds of hard power threats came over Europe. For Romania, probably earlier, because after the invasion of Ukraine, Romania engaged in programs of procurement, because I used to discuss before with the colleagues in the panel that being here, you feel the breath of the bear. And we've started ambitious program to improve our capacity to respond to an aggression against Romania. And these programs included long-range air defenses, long-range fires, fourth-generation multi-role airplanes, and also command and control system, modernizing our individual equipment, APCs for the infantry. So all these programs started a little bit earlier. And then the shock came for all of us with the invasion, illegal attack against Ukraine. And we started to realize that the hard power is here. And I will quote General Cavoli: if somebody attacks you with a tank, you cannot respond with a soft tool. You need a hard equipment to fight that tank. And also, we face now mass, while we were orientated toward precision and high-end capabilities. Now there is a need for balance between cheap mass equipment and high-end, very expensive equipment. This balance is very difficult. The industry, I think, tried to keep the pace with us, tried to keep the pace with the urgent requirements, because in this relation between options and existent tools, we have one constant. All the time, we as end user, we have urgent requests with complex capabilities, with very, very tight requirements, in order not to be able only to fight today, but to be able to cover and fight the next war, which is, again, a huge problem. And then there are a lot of variables into the defense sectors. let's talk about the chain of supply, talking about the evolution of prices. Let's talk about the workforce crisis. So all of these are variables for the industry, and again, me as an end user, I don't want to look at that. I'm looking to the constant. I need this, I need fast, I need tomorrow, because I have to defend my country. So this is the dilemma, and this is the, let's say, the broad image where the endowment programs of the Romanian Armed Forces are today. We are working together with the counterparts in the industry, with the counterparts in the political body, in order to help us to acquire as fast as possible whatever is needed to build up the capabilities required by the Romanian people to defend them, but also required by NATO and the EU to contribute to the common security policy of the EU or to the defending of the alliance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Andrew, European countries' armies are now buying a lot of American stuff. For example, Czech Republic and Romania now are negotiating about the F-35s. What is the perspective from Washington with this question of what industry can not only offer but also produce on time en masse?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to this really important conference and to the organizers for a terrific event. To your question, look, I think it's true about the US and about Europe that we urgently need to rebuild the defense industrial capacity that we reduced during the so-called peace dividend era, the end of history, the 20 years of global war on terror, overseas contingency operations and whatnot. The defense sector is not a charitable sector. They operate based on contracts and demand that's put in front of them. So the message I would argue from both European governments and a number of US administrations over the last 30 years has been that we need to move to maximum efficiency, just-in-time delivery, limited stockpiling, limited redundancies. So the industry responded with consolidation. So we went from about 51 principal defense and space contractors at the end of the Cold War through consolidations to mainly 5 principals. And that means that the production lines are constrained. The same goes for production of ammunition. And all of that worked pretty well because during the 20 years of overseas contingency operations, we could actually plan quite effectively what stockpiles we needed, what we needed to deploy, force generation issues. We controlled our logistics were not under threat. All of that is now going out of the picture. So we need to move from just-in-time kind of mentality to just-in-case, redundancies, stockpiling. There will be missiles flying at those ships and airplanes in case there is a conflict. We need to have the capacity in our industry to produce at scale. And here there's a problem because of the extent to which, and this is also true about Europe, it's the contraction of the defense sector. In our case, it's also the extent to which we shed some of the manufacturing capacity through offshoring and globalization. So we need to reshore these critical supply chain networks, number one. And that means that the governments need to move. They need to issue contracts. They need to streamline acquisition processes. That's the first thing. And then secondly, we need to get into a kind of new urgency about the nature of the threat. I just returned from 7 years working in Germany for the Defense Department. I was previously in different positions in Europe, and now being back in Washington, I'm struck by the fact that what we lack in our policy discourse is a sense of urgency of the timelines and how quickly we need to get ready in the event there is a crisis. We have the largest war in Europe we've had since 1945. That theater has now widened because of the conflict in Israel and the possible escalation should Hamas be now complemented by Hezbollah. This will become then a major regional conflict that's draining US resources, pulling us in a different direction. Another potential crisis, say in the Balkans, or an escalation through North Korea, or, the biggest nightmare for us is the Indo-Pacific. If we don't start building up at scale munitions productions, weapons productions, then we may be caught in a situation where we will have the most exquisite precision weapon systems, but we'll run out when it becomes a numbers game. And I think that's what the politicians have to understand, not today, but yesterday.
Thank you. Radu, you can play a role of the European on the panel. I know that you cannot play the role of the expert on the industry, but
yes.
For example, if I compare Czech Republic and Romanian approach, in Romania, defense industry is mostly state-owned. In Czech Republic, it's vice versa. It's private. It was privatized, or it's private. So what's the state of the play of the industry in Romania, and how it's going to play with the Europe?
I will start my intervention by quoting NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, that often said in the last year, NATO has two threats to face: Russia, aggressive, assertive, and terrorism. And we are all understood that those are concrete threats, not theoretical. So from this point of view, I think we all allies, not only Romania or Czech Republic, we all have a certain responsibility to understand that we have to invest to prevent the war and the terrorism to expand. We don't have to wait for the wars to be on our frontiers. We don't have to wait for the terrorist threats to be, let's say, a daily breaking news in our capitals, in our cities. So from this point of view, I want to propose all of you an idea that we all allies, especially NATO and EU, have to make a brave decision. I think we should have a certain percentage of the GDP to prevent the war and the terrorists to expand. Of course, we have this allied recommendation, 2% of GDP for defense. I think is a little bit general after the war started, and we are facing the threat here in Europe, and we are facing this difficult, very difficult issue of state-sponsored terrorism in the Middle East and the aggression against Israel. So my idea is to propose 0.1 of GDP of all NATO allies to prevent the war and terrorism to expand. When we are thinking about spending money, also Jens Stoltenberg said, it's only an effort to our very good lives and peaceful and nice living that we have. It will be only an effort of money. The others are losing lives and maybe countries. So 0.1 of GDP to prevent the war and the terrorists to expand. Just think what our strongest ally will mean 0.1 of GDP. United States have $23 trillion GDP. 0.1 of GDP will mean 23 billion. Right now, United States is giving more than 23 billion as security assistance for Ukraine and helping Israel to fight terrorism. But let's have an exercise in thinking what will mean 0.1 of GDP of G7 countries. What will mean 0.1 of GDP for 31, I hope, very soon 33 NATO members. What will mean 0.1 GDP for all the 50 countries from defense contact group in Ramstein. So from my calculations, we will have something like $100 billion per year to prevent the war to expand, to prevent the Russian aggressive, assertive posture to come closer to Europe, and also to fight terrorism. 100 billion effort for us, it could be sustainable, because then we have the other 99.9% of GDP of money to have our peaceful, profitable and comfortable lives. And if we make this decision that from 2% of the GDP for defense and security, we can have 0.1 to prevent the war to extend, then those money could go every year on an institutional base, because right now we have the coalition of the willing. Right now we have countries who are willing to support Ukraine to fight the Russian aggression. We have the coalition of the willing to help Israel to fight terrorism. But we need an institutional decision. We need to assume that in the next 5-7 years, we will still have those threats. And 100 billion will go right now to Ukraine and Israel, but tomorrow could be for another country. God forbid, but we need to face this reality. So defense industry is working on money and orders. If we have the money, we can give the orders. If we have this courage to take the decision, then we will have a perspective. We could be more resilient. And of course, there will be no more problems with delivering arms and ammunition to our partners, to our allies, and now to our friends that are fighting wars of invasion and terrorism. So this is my idea, and I just can expect to have the debate on. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that the mother of all questions in this area is how to persuade politicians, how to go from the nice words into practical terms, orders. Is there any kind of magical solution, gentlemen, for this? You know, not just to speak about it, but how to force them, you know, because we had a, for example, initiative to give the €500 million for the ammunition initiative, but it was not supposed to go to the production lines. It was supposed to go to the bureaucracy around that. So, and you spoke about sense of urgency. Is there anything more? Yes.
Okay, so I think that there are two issues here. One is that I think the biggest challenge will be for NATO to come up with a genuinely shared nature of the threat or the intensity of the threat perception. What you have in Europe right now is a regionalized security optics. You've got political consensus that we are confronting something unprecedented because the Russians have violated repeatedly some of the core principles of territorial integrity and everything that the transatlantic community stands for. But at the same time, the intensity of that threat is kind of regionalized across the geography of Europe. So if you go to Helsinki or Bucharest or in Romania, or you go to Warsaw or Tallinn, there's a very keen sense of the existential nature of the threat. And these countries are the countries, if you look at the F-35 orders that the Finns are putting in, the Poles, Romanians, I think Czech Republic is moving in that direction, the amount of armor that's being ordered and the rest of it, that reflects that consensus on the nature of the threat and its intensity. But that begins to change in terms of appetite for risk-taking as you start moving across Western Europe. Because nations live in neighborhoods in the final analysis, how your 360-degree environment is shaped, that determines your political willingness to act. And I'm bringing this up to say, during the Cold War, it didn't really matter when you were confronting the Warsaw Pact, where you were on that map, whether you were in Paris or London or Bonn, you were exposed to the same threat level in the event of a conflict. This was overwhelming, this was understood. So the first thing is, I think there's a lot of political work to be done within the alliance and at the bilateral government-to-government level to bring the alliance closer into that understanding of what's at stake. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is we're democracies. So you need to speak to the public. You need to communicate to the electorate what's at stake, which means the leaders need to actually address their citizenry and say why we're being asked to spend money on defense, and continue to reinforce that message. It needs to be done in terms that actually speak to the average citizen. You know, we talk in normative terms. We're defending the rules-based international order. I like to joke that if I went to a farmer in Iowa and I said, you're supposed to pay taxes because you're defending the rules-based international order, he would look at me and say, what are you smoking, right? But if I came to him and I said to him, you're doing this because it's your economic prosperity, it's your homeland security, it's the safety of your children, it's the future of your grandchildren, and here's why. And that would be understood and supported. You need to ask permission from the people. And so too much of our discussion about these problems are elite conversations. You know, I'm back in the US now, 7 years in Germany, I'm in Washington. It's the corporate town. I mean, if you do national security, that's where everything is happening. But I sometimes have a feeling we should do more convening in Chicago, in Minneapolis, you know, go into the heartland and present these issues. And I think you need to do the same thing in Europe. Again, not just have an in-house kind of in-the-bubble conversation, but speak in terms that resonate with the public. And I think that's very, very important. Final comment, money. I am sick and tired of percentages of GDP, you know, conversation. To me, that's always been a political cop-out. Because you can spend 10% of your GDP on defense. If 80% of this goes to personnel, retirement, and all of that, what capabilities are you really producing? And I think if you look at the 3 regional plans that General Cavoli developed that were approved at Vilnius, the capabilities targets, we should talk in terms of what specific forces each country should provide to the alliance that he can tie into his battle plans. What kind of exercise skill sets they need to develop. And so the percentages of GDP are good indicators because they're indicators of political will. But what you really need is the real substantive military capabilities. And I hope I don't offend anybody in this room, but this is a very wealthy continent, ladies and gentlemen. It's got probably twice as much population as the United States, roughly. It's been rolling in butter for the last 30 years, no offense. Against this, you have in the line a pale shadow of the Soviet Union, you know, less than half of the population of the USSR. The Soviets had 54 non-Soviet Warsaw Pact divisions at the drop of a hat. It was sitting in the heart of Europe, occupying 1/3 of Germany. China was nothing. I mean, this was the scope of the threat. So if you look at it right now, are you telling me Europe is not capable to produce the conventional deterrent element, the core, in NATO, with the US providing the nuclear strategic component, high-end enablers, and of course our portion? It's going to be very hard to sell to the US Congress that 5 or 6 or 7 years from now, not much has changed when it comes to rearmament in Europe. Bottom line, you need to rearm. You are more than capable to provide the core deterrent conventional capability, and if need be, defeat Russian aggression should it come to that. But it takes political will.
General.
Don't get mad at me.
Connecting with this dot, you know, how to persuade public, how to persuade politicians that it's necessary to go this direction. It reminds me, in Czech Republic, the Czech army had to do a big kind of campaign to persuade the public that it's worth to buy F-35s, and that spend this money in this direction. Are you here in Romania in this situation that you have to explain every day again and again why it's necessary, or is it the discussion? You don't have to tell any secrets from the cabinets, but if you tell, we will be happy. But where is the discussion here in Romania on this, as Andrew just described, necessity to invest, to revive domestic industry, to invest it more?
We are a little bit lucky in this respect because we have a more than 300 history with Russians, and whenever the Russians came into the Romanian principalities and then in Romania, the Romanian people suffered. So it's no doubt that Romanians do not love Russians. This is why Russia was perceived all the time as a threat for Romanians. This is why when you come to explain our people that we need to defend against Russians, the Romanian people understand. It's something that is embedded in the collective mind. It's something embedded in the behavior of Romanians. But looking at the threat, and again, geography matters. NATO is speaking about the eastern flank. Romania is on the front. We are not on the eastern flank. We are a front country. If Russians come to our border, we will be the front, the first line of own defense for NATO. And if they pass us, they will move into the Hungary. They will move into Bulgaria. That means we are on the front. And in this respect, the capability you need have to cover a multi-domain operation. Of course, you mentioned the regional plans and what happened in NATO in the last, let's say, 2 years and a half. It's something that it doesn't happen in the history after the fall of the Iron Curtain. So these plans are not, you know, the universal panacea. These are drivers to help us as NATO members to transform our armed forces in order to face this type of threat. Yes, of course, the plans have list of forces. Yes, of course, the plans needs to be filled with forces, and there are a lot of processes going on, starting from changing the NATO defense planning process to align the planning process to the requirements of the plans, moving into a new force model, which put the readiness of the forces on the forefront. So there are a lot of transformations and processes in NATO, and all the countries align their national defense plans with these NATO plans in order to ensure a synchronization in time and space and the convergence of effects in order to avoid duplication. And all these, if we come to an end, moves into required of capabilities. If you want to build a capability, you need equipment, you need ammunition, you need communication systems, you need ISR equipment, you know, intelligence, reconnaissance, and surveillance, and all of them come together to counter the most dangerous course of action that NATO and nations foreseen for this threat. So this is how we are working. So we are working on plans. The plans moves into capabilities. Capabilities goes in, as you mentioned, orders for the industry. The industry have to respond. So this is what we are doing now, and it's very difficult. And as you mentioned, we do not have to convince our grandparents or parents that lived during the Second World War. They know what the Russians have done when they came here. If we go to the political body, the political body in Romania at least understood very well, and we have a contract, let's say a contract, to have 2% of the GDP, and this allowed us to start the programs that I mentioned before, early on. Now we are, I think, on the 6th year with 2% of the GDP. Starting from this year, we have 2.5 of the GDP. And of course, you've mentioned not to waste, but to use money in other directions. It is not the case for Romania. So in 2022, out of 2% of the GDP, we put 22% of these into the acquisition. And this year, we have 37% of the 2.5 into the acquisition. So it's very important. Also, we put money into research and technology. It's a part of the defense budget set for this. So I think Romania is on a good track on this. But again, we are facing some shortfalls, and I mentioned some of them, those variables of the defense industry. We have complex and sometimes very difficult acquisition processes. Then we have now a list of wait. You need to wait until the industry is able to deliver what they promise. But what is to be done is to have predictability, to allow the industry to restart and to move into growing their capacity, and meantime, to have that strategic patience, which is difficult to maintain, because as I mentioned, we need to fight tonight and to prepare for the future war. So these are the complexity of the problem. But I think predictability is the best way to allow the industry to follow a long-term path in order to fulfill our urgent requirements on request. I don't know, I'm not a manager of an industrial enterprise, but I think they need some time to build up this capability, to be able to transition very fast from a peacetime establishment into a crisis and then into a war production. This is, I think, the thing that managers into the defense industry should think about.
We do not have somebody from the industry on the panel, but I guess that they are solving the issue of predictability in unpredictable times. Maybe we have a question there from the audience.
Thank you so much, Rufin Zamfir. I'll try to represent the industry, although, yeah, just for the sake of argument. And I will try to rephrase something that you, Martin, said in previously, this, how shall we move from nice discussions to implementable solutions for this. And I will rephrase this, how shall we move from contemplating the problem to really solving the problem? The wars are fought with arms and ammunition. Yeah, Mr. Michta mentioned that those percentages, are nice, but won't solve by themselves the problem. And I was wondering, because I know for a fact that nobody in the industry will shy away for receiving help in boosting their capacities. And I know for a fact that there are out there business enterprises that are still waiting for the papers to be signed in some cabinet in order for them to start production of ammunition and arms. And my question is, who should solve this problem? Is this a problem that in times of crisis should stay only with state authorities, or should we move this at the next level, at the international one, at the NATO level? Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Thank you for the question. This is the never-ending conversation about domestic defense industry and the obvious reasons why governments want to protect those industries, and what the STANAGs are and what the alliance needs as a whole. I don't think NATO can actually do it in terms of stimulating the spending and giving contracts on that kind of basis. But I think there are things that NATO can do that can change our competitive position. During the Cold War, we had, so-called COCOM restrictions in NATO, Coordinating Committee on Exports. So you couldn't sell dual-use technology to our adversaries in the Soviet bloc. We have abandoned all of that when globalization hit and, end of history and all that nonsense. And so we actually shipped entire production lines, technologies. I'm not talking about selling products. I mean, I'm talking about the entire technological culture that took generations to develop, to a 1.4 communist totalitarian state, and build a story around it that, of course, as middle class rises, it'll democratize, Jeffersons will rise, and everybody will be happy. And we created the monster. So one of the parts of that conversation on capacity is reshoring. It's building up, but it's also reshoring, or at least friendshoring some of our supply chains. You cannot go into a conflict with an adversary and rely on that adversary on some of the basic stuffs. You need to have capacities. So here it's long overdue for the alliance to get together and say, hey, we're going to stop the leakage of technology, especially to China. But to a large extent, the reason the Russians have improved some of their systems, if you look at submarine propulsions, some of the hypersonics, it's access to Western technology. We've allowed our adversaries unfettered access to our entire societies, our educational systems, our labs. In effect, we're training their weapons designers in our universities, for crying out loud. Just to give you a snippet, 2019, I did some research before COVID happened. We had about 1 million foreign students in the US, and universities love foreign students. They come in, pay full tuition, don't complain, you know, wonderful. 370,000 of those at that time were Chinese grad students in STEM, okay? We were also allowing for direct commissioning of research, some of it funded actually from public sources. I mean, this is insane. This has to end. And what I find very disturbing is that as tensions build up, and remember that the Russians and the Chinese are building up their militaries not to deter us. They have very clear plans. The Russians have already shown what they intend to do. They intend to reconquer the empire, rebuild the sphere of influence. Quintessentially revisionist state. Putin is relitigating 1991. The Chinese want to basically replace the structures that the US and its democratic allies put in place with one built around their own values, institutions, economic power, and the rest of it. So it's way past time for us to wake up and say, okay, I have relatives in Tennessee. There's a saying, if you find yourself in a hole, stop digging, right? So I don't know if the Chinese can outcompete us on AI or not. You know, there's some people who are saying, oh, they already have. I don't know. Let's see. But the current system where, you know, when COVID hit, 80% of our antibiotics were coming from China, for crying out loud. Capacities in the manufacturing sectors have to be there. You have to have redundancies. So cut off the bleed, governments move, change tax structure, provide incentives, provide contracts, streamline acquisition processes. There are countries in Europe where it's impossible to get from the order through actual approval to the actual contract. So lead times for ammunition, for example, are staggering in some countries. And that's not because there's no capacity. It's this whole bureaucracy that remains in place and all the, you know, laws and the rest of it.
You speak about Czech Republic or Romania now?
No. May I just make one point which is very important, because the general said something very, very critical, that you need all those systems to create capacities and capabilities, you know, anything from equipment, munitions, you know, comms and the rest of it. You also need manpower. And I have been talking for quite some time about the fundamental question whether the current all-volunteer force model is actually capable of providing the kind of reserves that we need in the event of an all-state-on-state conflict. The Ukrainians today have the largest army in Europe, okay? And they're beginning to face the reality of what attrition means on the battlefield in terms of population losses. The Russians have about 1 to 4 population advantage right now. And we've been so, you know, tied into the talk about mobility, precision. Well, mobility and attrition are part and parcel of the same conversation. So they, you know, we need to relearn these things. And I love the example of Finland. Tiny population in relative terms, 5.5 million. The Finns can go from, I don't know what it is, 70,000 to 280,000 at the drop of a hat. Why? Because they have national service from the age of 18 to 60. And in a critical time, they can go up to 800,000. They can't sustain it because they don't have population depth, but that tells you about the ability to surge manpower that you need. Look at the recruitment shortfalls in the US military, in European militaries. It's not just a question of incentives, it's trained reserves, right? It's the redundancy, I call it R&R, it's not rest and recreation. It's redundancies and reserves. That's what we need to change in our thinking about manpower.
Radu, you wanted to react on this? Paperwork in Romania?
Just 30 seconds. If we need ammunition, we need orders. If we need orders, we need money. If we need money, we need percentage of GDP. I know Andrew is sick and tired, and he's right. If we need certain percentage of the GDP, we need politicians. Do we have the politicians to face the reality that we are fighting a war? I don't think so. Because the military, they know what they need in order to fight a war. They need HIMARS, they need Patriot, they need 155 ammunition, everything. Do we have the politicians? I don't think so. We have a good example of Netherlands, which has a great reaction. And it's so brave, because on Monday we will inaugurate the F-16 Center of Training in Europe, the first one in Fetești. And the Dutch F-16s are here. From 31 NATO members, how many members gave F-16 to the Ukrainians, which is a brave decision? 2. The Dutch and the Denmark. So brave decisions needs brave politicians. Otherwise, the military, they do know what they need. Thank you.
I want only to address the question. I think the question was, are we alone in an island, or we were collaborative to solve the problem? So I think there are a lot of mechanisms. And probably you know NATO Support and Procurement Agency at NATO level. I can tell you that at this moment there are contracts ongoing for ammunition procurement through NSPA. We have the Permanent Structured Cooperation Mechanism in Europe, and there are a lot of projects that are ongoing, and the companies can enroll in this type of projects. Also, European Defence Agency assumed a role of agent between nations and industry in order to build up the so-called collaborative procurement process, and a lot of nations involved into different projects built up by ADA, EDA. So we are in, there are ongoing processes, and Romania is part of, for example, 12 projects for PESCO system, and it's just an example. But also the Romanian armed forces, they want to keep the connection with the national industry and to keep the contracts that we have ongoing and to develop the links between the Romanian armed forces and, of course, as Radu mentioned, we are in a position that the money, they are here, so we need a competitive industrial market where to go and choose whatever is within the frame of the money we have, but with the qualities that we require. So this is, I think we are not alone. Of course, there are, as I mentioned, a lot of variables into the European industrial market, defense industrial market. There are a lot of variables, but this type of, let's say, collaborative work help every nation to get itself into the process and then to take whatever they need.
I would add only to that it's also a question for us from the eastern part of the EU how to tap for the money from the EU. There was a recent study that 2/3 of the European Defence Fund in 2021 went to the 4 Western countries' companies. So it's also the question of our own ability to go into the Brussels to say so and ask and get the money. Unfortunately, we have a last question, so please, very brief.
Okay, thank you. I'll try to be brief. Andrei Lupu is my name. I'm a member of the Chamber of Deputies, the Defense Committee. So I have a question exactly on what General Bondar was trying to say. We do have the money, but another strategic question is, where do we buy from? We can buy, and we do buy from a lot of places right now, but let's look at the US. We'll have elections next year. We don't know how will the next government look towards collaborating with Europe regarding defense equipment. We do buy as well from Asian countries, from South Korea, from Israel, and when I say we, I'm not referring only to Romania, but we might have a conflict in the South Asia Sea. We have a conflict in Israel. A third option is to keep buying from different European countries, as Mr. Bondar was saying. For the moment, we have a mix of all of them, but we cannot be sure that we'll have this for the coming months or years. Conflict might start everywhere. Political changes might come from any place. So what should be our strategic decision regarding on what do we spend money on and exactly from where do we get the most important equipment? Thank you.
Gentlemen, please be short. I know the answer.
I think it's very important to understand that every procurement program passes a competitive bidding process. The provider comes in the end. So, as I mentioned, what capabilities do you need? How much money do you have? What do you need to do with those capabilities? All these comes into a process that there are requirements for the mission, operational requirements, and a lot of probably very long process of procurement. And then you have the political guidance. And you know for sure that for above a certain amount of money, we go to the parliament to have a decision on the acquisition. So I think the decision finally comes to the representatives of the people, because the contract goes into the parliament, what we want to acquire, and then goes to the specialists, the subject matter experts that they deal with this. So I think of course, from where we come, as I mentioned, we need to take into consideration the risk of supply chain. When you build up these documents, the requirements for the operational requirements, you need to take this into consideration. You need to take into consideration the offset offered with the contract. There are a lot of variables that comes into the acquisition process, but I'm not a specialist. There are subject matter experts that are working on this, and I'm sure there is no doubt that in the end, the Army received what they need. This is because it starts from us, and the product comes into our, let's say, military unit. So.
Thank you very much. No,
just very quickly.
We are over time, so
yeah,
please.
just very quickly. Start not with systems. This is a toolbox. Start with what your strategy is, what the theater looks like, what your military requirements are to actually get to those goals, and then put the tools. This is a system of systems conversation. And unfortunately, because of Ukraine, there's been this fascination with one magic bullet, the F-35, the F-16, the Abrams, this. No. It's what are your strategic objectives, how you operationalize those objectives, what your military strategy is, theater strategy, and then you get down to even a small unit level. That's where you provide equipment, as the general says, what they need.
Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We are over time, and the lunch is waiting for us, I guess. And unfortunately, we have to close that. Sorry, I'm very sorry. We can continue the discussion over the lunch, please. So thanks, General Bondor, Andrew Mikta, Radu Tudor. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this very intense discussion. Just a few logistics announcements, please, as we live in this period where everything happens very fast and change is our middle name. There are a few changes in the agenda, so please check your badges, the QR code on your badges to see. And just for you to know, we will be back here in half an hour to start the next session. So 30 minutes for lunch. Enjoy.